Three women disappeared from a quiet Italian town. Each believed she was leaving to begin a better life. One had been promised a husband, another a respectable teaching position. The third, a chance to return to the theatrical world she had once known. Before leaving, all three visited the same trusted woman. None of them came back. Years later, that woman would stand before a court and describe a large cooking pot, an axe, and what she claimed to have been made from the bodies of her friends. Her name was Leonarda Cianciulli, and she is better known as the Soap-Maker of Correggio. Leonardo was born in 1894 in Montella, a small town in southern Italy's province of Avellino. Almost everything written about her early life comes with an important warning. She was a storyteller. She could be persuasive, theatrical, and manipulative. Some of the darkest stories about her childhood came from Leonarda herself, years after her arrest. This makes it difficult to separate genuine memory from exaggeration or an attempt to explain what she later became. Leonarda described herself as an unwanted and unhappy child. She claimed that her mother had little affection for her and that she had tried to take her own life when she was young. Some later researchers have questioned when those attempts actually occurred, suggesting that at least some may have happened after her arrest rather than her childhood. But whether every detail was accurate or not, one belief appears throughout Leonarda's story. She believed that she was cursed. As a young woman, Leonarda married Raphael Pansardi, a registry office employee. Her family reportedly opposed the relationship, and Leonarda later claimed that her mother placed a curse upon the marriage. She also said that a fortune teller had predicted that she would marry and have children, but that her children would die. Another prediction told her that her future would end in either prison or a criminal asylum. These stories may have changed over time. They may have been distorted by memory. They may have even been invented. But she appeared to believe, or wanted everyone else to believe, that her life was controlled by supernatural forces. And as tragedy entered her family, those beliefs became more powerful. Leonarda reportedly experienced 17 pregnancies. 3 ended in miscarriage. 10 of her children died while they were still young, and 4 survived. After so much loss, she became intensely protective of the children who remained. She did not simply love them. She appeared to live in constant fear that death would return to take them away from her. That fear would eventually become central to the explanation she offered for the cruel acts she would later commit. But before she became one of Italy's most infamous killers, she had already shown another side of herself, a side her new neighbors in Correggio knew very little about. Leonarda's criminal history did not begin with murder. Records associated with her earlier life include a theft, threatening someone with a knife, and fraud. During the 1920s, she was convicted after deceiving a woman into handing over her money and valuable property. Leonarda spent more than 10 months in prison for fraud and was ordered to pay a fine. This history is important because it shows that long before the killings, she already understood how to gain someone's confidence, identify what the person possessed, and manipulate them to financial benefit. Leonarda and her husband moved several times. They lived in Lauria and later in Lacedonia. In 1930, an earthquake struck southern Italy and damaged their home. The family eventually relocated north to Correggio in the province of Reggio Emilia. Correggio was very different from the places she had previously lived. It was a productive agricultural town where people knew one another, exchanged gossip, and depended on local relationships. There, Leonarda created a new identity. Her husband worked for the local registry office, although his earnings were modest. She began buying and selling clothing, furniture, and household goods. Her business reportedly became successful enough to improve the family's financial position. Leonarda also started dabbling in palm reading, astrology, and fortune-telling with folk magic. Women came to her with private concerns and dreams of aspiration. She listened to them, and people trusted her. Reporting described her as a fortune teller and even a local poet. Later accounts said that she was regarded in Correggio as an exemplary mother and a dependable woman. She regularly welcomed people into her home, entertained them with stories, and served baked goods to visitors. She was considered eccentric but not dangerous. She was social and generous and known as a devoted mother. And despite their criminal convictions in her past, she was respected in her new community. This reputation became one of her greatest weapons. The 3 women she would eventually murder did not enter the home of someone they feared. They entered the home of a friend. By the end of the 1930s, Europe was moving towards war. Leonarda's eldest son, Giuseppe, was studying literature, but he was also approaching military age. As Italy prepared for conflict, she feared that he would be called into service. To another parent, that fear might have produced sleepless nights, desperate prayers, or attempts to keep a child away from the front. For Leonarda, according to her later confession, it produced the idea of sacrifice. She claimed that the deaths of her earlier children had convinced her that a curse will still follow the family. If Giuseppe was to survive the coming war, she believed another life had to be exchanged for his. A human life. Leonarda would later say she had killed because of a mother's love, but that explanation was challenged in court. The prosecution argued that superstition was not the entire motive. All 3 victims had savings, property, and personal belongings that she could take. She persuaded them to sign documents, sell possessions, and place money under her control. The killings therefore had 2 possible motives. The first was the motive Leonarda promoted, ritual sacrifice intended to protect her children. The second was far more practical, greed. It is possible that both motives existed at the same time. She may have believed in curses while also recognizing that the deaths would make her money. She may have also used the supernatural explanation after her arrest because it sounded less calculating than murdering 3 friends for their property. No one can know precisely where delusion ended and manipulation began. What is clear is that Leonarda selected 3 vulnerable women whose private desires she understood. She did not attack strangers in the street. She created a different dream for each victim. Then she transformed the dream into a trap. Faustina Setti was an older unmarried woman who wanted companionship. She was lonely, and despite her age, she had not abandoned the hope that she might still find a husband. Leonarda knew this. She told Faustina that she had located a suitable man in Pola, a city on the Adriatic coast that was then under Italian control. The offer must have sounded extraordinary. A new husband, a new city, a new beginning far away from the routines and gossip of Correggio. But Leonarda warned Faustina to keep the arrangement secret. She claimed that other people might become jealous or interfere before the marriage could take place. Secrecy isolated Faustina from the people who might have questioned the plan. Leonarda then persuaded her to prepare the letters and postcards for her friends. These messages announced that Faustina had left and that everything was well. Because Faustina had difficulty reading and writing, Leonarda helped prepare the correspondence herself. She also persuaded Faustina to sign documents that gave Leonarda authority over some of her possessions. On December 17, 1939, Faustina arrived at Leonarda's home for what she believed would be the final preparations for her journey. There was no husband waiting in Pola, and there was no journey. According to Leonarda's confession, she struck Faustina with an axe. After the killing, she dragged the body into a small storage area and cut it into 9 pieces. She collected the blood in a basin. The body was then placed inside a large pot with caustic soda, a powerful chemical used in cleaning and traditional soap making. Leonarda claimed that she stirred the contents until the remains broke down into a thick, dark substance. She says she transferred the material into containers and poured it into a nearby cesspit. Then came the detail that would make her case infamous around the world. She claimed that she allowed the blood to coagulate, dried it in an oven, and ground the dried material into powder. She says she mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs and baked it into pastries. She claimed that she and Giuseppe ate them. She also claimed that she served them to women who visited her home. This story came from Leonarda herself. It was repeated during the investigation and in the memoir attributed to her, but every stage of the pastry claim was not independently proven by forensic testing. What investigators did establish was that Faustina had disappeared after trusting Leonarda, and that Leonarda had gained access to her possessions. The letters Faustina had prepared helped delay suspicion. To anyone receiving them, Faustina appeared to have left willingly. The victim had unknowingly helped create Leonarda's alibi. The second woman was Francesca Soavi. Francesca was a teacher who wanted a better position. Leonarda approached her with another carefully designed opportunity. She claimed that she had arranged employment for Francesca at a school or institution for girls in Piacenza. Just as she had done with Faustina, Leonarda encouraged Francesca not to discuss the opportunity with other people. Francesca prepared messages explaining that she was leaving to Correggio. She also made arrangements involving her belongings and finances. On September 5, 1940, Francesca went to Leonarda's home before her supposed departure. She never reached Piacenza. According to Leonarda, she killed Francesca with the same axe and disposed of the body using the same general process. Once again, the victim's prepared correspondence was mailed after her death. Leonarda's son Giuseppe became involved in sending some of these messages, apparently believing that he was carrying out errands for his mother. His involvement would later bring him under police suspicion. The country was now at war. Italy had officially entered the Second World War in June 1940, and ordinary life was being disrupted by military preparations, shortages, and fear. Against that chaotic background, the disappearance of one woman did not immediately produce a major investigation. Leonarda had also constructed a convincing explanation. Francesca had wanted a new job and she had told people she was leaving. Letters appeared to confirm that she had safely reached her destination. Meanwhile, Leonarda benefited from what Francesca left behind. Virginia Cacioppo had once been an opera singer. Some accounts describe her as having performed successfully in earlier years, but by 1940 her financial position had declined. She wanted stability. She may have also wanted to reconnect with the theatrical world that had once given her status and purpose. Leonarda offered her exactly that. She claimed that she had found Virginia employment in Florence as a secretary connected to a theatrical producer. That position might even lead to future performance opportunities. For Virginia, it must have sounded like more than a job. It was a chance to return to the life she remembered. Leonarda again insisted upon secrecy. Virginia began preparing to leave. Her belongings, money, and personal documents became part of the arrangement. In late November 1940, she entered Leonarda's home. According to her confession, Virginia was killed with the axe and dismembered like the other two victims. Leonarda later claimed that because Virginia had more body fat, the chemical process produced a better soap. She said she added perfume to the mixture and created pale, creamy bars that she distributed to neighbors and acquaintances. She also claimed that pastries made from Virginia's blood tasted better than those made after the previous killings. These statements were horrifying, but they also sounded strangely theatrical. Leonarda spoke about human remains as though she were describing an ordinary household recipe. That cold, domestic language helped turn the case into a national sensation. Again, the most extreme details came largely from Leonarda herself. The evidence supported murder, dismemberment, and the chemical destruction of the bodies. Investigators reportedly found blood and dentures connected to the victims in Leonarda's home. But because the bodies had been largely destroyed, it was difficult to scientifically verify every claim she made about exactly what was consumed or distributed. Virginia's disappearance also created a problem Leonarda had not faced as strongly with the first two victims. Virginia had a relative who refused to accept the explanation that she had simply began a new life. Her sister-in-law, Albertina Fanti, became suspicious, and that suspicion began to pull Leonarda's carefully constructed story apart. The factual record contains extremely graphic details. Leonarda confessed to striking the victims with an axe. She described dragging the bodies into a storage area and cutting them apart. In Faustina's case, she says she divided the body into 9 sections. She collected blood in a basin. The dismembered remains were placed in a large pot with several kilograms of caustic soda and heated for hours. Caustic soda began breaking down the soft tissue and fat. Leonarda said the process reduced the bodies into a dark, thick mixture. Some of this material was allegedly poured into a cesspit. She claimed the soap was made from at least some of Virginia's remains, with perfume added to conceal or improve the smell. She also claimed the blood from the victims were dried in the oven, ground, and mixed into baked goods. The accepted historical account therefore includes murder, dismemberment, and chemical destruction of the bodies. The soap and pastry details are closely associated with the case and appeared in Leonarda's own statements, but responsible retelling should always explain where those claims originated. Leonarda had reasons to exaggerate. She enjoyed storytelling. During the investigation and trial, she sometimes gave dramatic answers and corrected officials when she believed they had described her methods incorrectly. By turning herself into a supernatural mother performing blood sacrifices, she may have hoped to appear insane rather than greedy, or she may have genuinely believed everything she said. The disturbing possibility is that the two explanations are not mutually exclusive. She could have been superstitious, mentally disturbed, and financially motivated at the same time. The investigation unfolded while Italy was consumed by war. Her trial did not begin until 1946, after the fall of the fascist government and the end of the Second World War. By then, the case had become a national spectacle. The courtroom attracted reporters, photographers, and members of the public. She did not present herself as a frightened woman overwhelmed by accusations. She spoke forcefully. She described the killings in unsettling detail. When experts discussed how long it would take to dismember a body, Leonarda reportedly objected to their estimates and demonstrated that she could perform the task more quickly. The trial had to answer a difficult question. Was she legally responsible for her crimes? Psychiatric experts examined her mental condition. The court considered her obsession with curses, magic, and sacrifice, as well as her extreme fixation on protecting her children. But the prosecution emphasized the careful planning. Leonarda selected women with savings. She invented opportunities based on their desires. She demanded secrecy. She prepared false correspondence. She obtained control over property. She destroyed the bodies to eliminate evidence. Those were not spontaneous acts carried out during a moment of confusion. They were organized crimes. Leonarda defended herself by insisting that the victims were sacrifices. She claimed their deaths were necessary to protect Giuseppe and her other surviving children. Prosecutors argued that greed was the real motive. The court ultimately found that she had a degree of mental impairment but was still criminally responsible. Leonarda Cianciulli was convicted of murdering Faustina Setti, Francesca Soavi, and Virginia Cacioppo. She was also convicted in relation to the theft of their property and the destruction of mistreatment of their bodies. Her sentence was 30 years in prison, with an additional 3 years to be served in a criminal psychiatric institution. Giuseppe was eventually cleared for lack of sufficient evidence that he had knowingly participated in the murders. Leonarda has succeeded in protecting her son from conviction. Leonarda Cianciulli spent the remainder of her life in custody. She died in 1970 in a psychiatric institution in Pozzuoli. Objects associated with the case, including the large pot said to have been used in the destruction of the bodies, became part of a criminological museum located in Rome. Over time, the story slowly made its way to folklore status, and Leonarda will always be known as the Soap-Maker of Correggio.